Hello everybody, once again, welcome back to the channel. I am once again in the car, which means I saw yet another new film. I am not joined by my usual co-host DJ because he was not feeling well this evening. So you guys are left with me and me alone. What film did I go and see this weekend? I saw none other than the newest dark comedy horror film, Frankenstein. Frankenstein, if you guys are not familiar, is, as I said, a dark comedy horror based around the premise of a young teenage girl who's going through a lot in her life, kind of has an interest in a man who died a long time ago, and the man comes back to life, and it's kind of about their story as things unfold. The plot ensues, comedic things happen, yada yada yada. This film was not exactly what I thought it was going to be. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's bad. It's just one of those things where I had an idea in my head about where I would take a story like this, and as a result, when it really kind of deviated, I was just a little thrown off. But overall, the film, I'd say, is a 6. It is not a bad film by any means. I enjoyed the film. The cinematography is pretty good. Some of the visual gags are pretty good. The humor is decent. Acting and directing, I think, did fairly well. It just isn't necessarily the best film. It's just one of those things where it's like a 6 out of 10 because I don't regret seeing it, but at the same time, I'm not necessarily like itching to watch it again, and it's not really something that I think that's going to be extremely memorable down the line. But overall, it's enjoyable. Do I recommend this film for the movie theater experience? Honestly, I don't think you really gain anything from going to the theater and seeing it, but I don't think you necessarily lose anything by going to the theater to view it. So I just recommend maybe when the ticket prices go down, like when this becomes more of a later showing, if it's still in theaters for a little bit. I don't know how long they're going to keep a film like this in theaters, but when the ticket prices go down, it's probably worth seeing it in theaters. Go and see it with friends, though. Just a lot of the humor is off-putting enough that it would really benefit from a full theater of people with kind of a darker sense of humor. Otherwise, you can wait for it to come out to rent. I think that it does deserve some money. It doesn't deserve to flop by any stretch of the imagination. So overall, I'd say it's a good film, but don't be expecting like the film of the year. Don't be expecting this like amazing, great comedy. But it's decent. I enjoyed it. I don't really have much else to say in this section, so I'm going to move into spoilers. So if you're just here for the review without the spoilers, thank you guys so much for watching this. I hope if you enjoyed this review, give us a thumbs up. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Otherwise, I'm going to continue on with spoilers. Spoilers. Like I said at the beginning of this review, this film isn't really necessarily what I thought it was going to be. My idea for the film, I think, is a little bit more fun, but at the same time, that's just kind of like creative bias. You have this idea in your head about something, and you usually think that your ideas are pretty good until it comes out on paper. This film really kind of took what I assumed the film was going to be from the trailers, as well as what I personally would have done with the material that I saw, and it's very, very different. The idea that I had of the film was that the girl is desperately alone. She may have kind of fallen in love with the idea of this guy because of his statue. Maybe he had some lore about him in the town. Whatever it is, she just feels more connection to him and wishes that she was with him. And decides to dig him up and literally do a Frankenstein situation where she takes this guy and she starts putting him together and bringing him back to life. That's kind of what I assumed was going to be the way that this film went, just from the trailer and the way that they pieced the trailer together. And I'm talking about like the really fun trailer that they showed. The second trailer was kind of weak for this film, to be honest. that is not at all really how this film goes. She makes a wish in the graveyard because she wishes that she was dead. So she's like, I wish I was with you, because she wishes she was dead. But magical lightning ensues, resurrects him, and he shows up at her house because she wished to be with him. So he assumed, long lost love kind of thing. We're going to be together forever. As things progress, they end up killing a couple of people and using body parts from each of those people to fix him a little bit. And every time that they kind of fix him, he gets electrocuted, and it brings him more and more to life and flesh-like and lifelike. Culminating in them ultimately doing the deed. So, I have to say that this film is not rip-roaringly hilarious. It has dark humor moments, and it has decent humor points, but it really is like every little gag is chuckle. You know, like there's anything that goes beyond a chuckle, but it does have you chuckling for most of the film, actually. There's quite a bit of good references, there's good visual gags, there's decent line delivery. The story in and of itself is just kind of ridiculous. If you give in to the ridiculous premise of it, it's more fun, in my opinion. This film would have benefited more, I think, just having more people in the audience, because sometimes something happens and you're like, oh, this is funny, but you don't really hear the laughter in the background, so you're like, maybe I'm just nuts. Which I am, but whatever. So, it's just one of those things where I thought it would have been more fun if literally she just, like, could not cope with, like, the stresses of being a teenager kind of thing, so she ends up going down this, like, phase where she's like, you know, people, they don't make men like they used to anymore, and so she literally resurrects an older romantic. I think that would have worked a little bit better, just because this film's really, like, the magic lightning doesn't really make a lot of sense. The fact he's constantly getting more and more put together as they electrocute him doesn't always necessarily make sense. And yeah, it's just one of those really, it's an odd film, but it's like funny, quirky, kooky odd. So it's not like a bad odd. I would compare this film to The Dead Don't Die, except it's actually way more enjoyable than The Dead Don't Die. It's a lot more funny. It's a lot less dry humor. It's more dark humor. There's a lot of stuff in there that's like psychology references and stuff like that. Like there's one character in particular who just has really awful psychology and is listening to this audio tape that's just confirming like her biases, and it's stating that, like, it essentially equates it essentially states that empathetic and good people have narcissistic tendencies, which is hilarious if you actually pay attention to, like, psychology, because it's like, no, narcissists are not, they're not empathetic people. They're not, you know, they don't do empathy. They literally can't, they don't do empathy. So it's just one of those things where it's like some of the humor is pretty good in regards to that. The psychology humor is kind of fun. Otherwise, it has a lot of references to the Universal Monsters, the classic Universal Monster films, specifically Frankenstein, obviously. But it has references to Frankenstein, but it also has references to a bunch of older films, specifically. There's a silent film that is very clearly referenced throughout the entire movie, but I'm forgetting the name of it. It's the one with the moon with the face. That's what's referenced pretty much the entire film. Like I said, all the acting is pretty good. Cole Sprouse doesn't have really any lines until the end of the film, which I thought was kind of fun, because literally Lisa Swallows is her name. Lisa is constantly giving him his lines, essentially, because he's looking at her and she's just assuming. So she's actually being kind of, you know, like she's paying attention to like his cues and stuff like that. It's just interesting how blind she is to the fact that like he's literally this helpless romantic who thinks that she wanted to be with him, so he literally came back from the dead to be with her, but he misunderstood, and he's this classic romantic type. So it's fun in those ways. There's a lot of kooky humor, quirky humor. So it's an enjoyable film. I liked it. Just, it's not the best film. It's not the best comedy by any stretch of the imagination. So yeah, ending of the film, I enjoyed the ending of the film, although I felt it was kind of rushed at the end, just because we do see that obviously the police are starting to come after the two of them because they found the bodies. They found out that the only person who's connected to all of the missing people is Lisa, obviously, and so she decides after they do the deed that she's going to die, and she says death is temporary, love is forever, I'll always be with you. And she ends up in the last scene being shown to have been resurrected by he doesn't even have a name. They don't really name him. All we see on the tombstone is Ein, E-I-N. So his name could have been Frankenstein. His name could have been anything, really. So he doesn't really have much of a name. He's just like the dead guy. All the acting was done pretty well. The casting is pretty on point. Although, I don't know. It really is one of those things where I hate to say it, but the film, it felt almost like we were kind of cheated out of a better film by the trailer. The trailer was a lot of fun, and like I said, I had a lot of assumptions about the way that things were going to go. Lisa isn't like dealing with the stresses of just being a teenager and being alone, or having men who aren't romantic, which would have been actually really fun. Like, it would have been kind of a funny comedy thing, because a lot of teen dramas take place in high school, where the high school romance is actually really serious and it's really big and it'll last forever. Whereas most people who have ever been through high school or saw other people's relationships in high school would be like, it's ridiculous. Because you don't know how to be romantic in high school. You're not mature enough to really be that super romantic. Whereas in the old days, we're like, oh yeah, you know, like 18, 19, 20-year-olds, they were super duper romantic because they were getting married. But it's like, yes, because they matured extremely quickly. They were constantly associated with things like their own mortality. So they literally matured when they were 18 because they had to get married because, bro, they're on their midlife crisis. So it would have actually been really fun if they had taken this story where Lisa maybe just was struggling with being a teenager and being like really dark and like dealing with her own angst. Like that's what I was looking for. Angst. Like she's just really angsty and tries to find relationships and stuff like that. But literally all the boys that she's in a relationship with, because they're high schoolers, just act like regular high schoolers, and they're just kids. They don't have like a lot of romantic feelings. They're really just kind of like, bro, like, are we doing it? Like, we're going to prom, you know, like stuff like that would have been interesting, because then she would have gone to the cemetery full of bachelors from like the 1800s and been like, man, they don't make men like they used to. They're supposed to be suave. They're supposed to be romantic. They're supposed to sweep you off your feet. They're supposed to be men. but they're not. They're teenagers who have like no motivation to actually be romantic or actually care necessarily. And then this guy comes back to life and she has to literally like put him together, because he's not physically there, but he is like kind of emotionally there in a way. That would have just been a fun twist. And like I said, you could have kept a lot of the same humor. You could have kept a lot of different little plot points and stuff like that. I just think that the motivation and the cause of him coming back to life. Would have been better if Lisa literally was like a whiz at science, because that's all she knows how to do. And she gets really into this idea of guy who died, used to be really, really romantic, died tragically. He'd probably take care of me if he hadn't have died. So anyway, that's just kind of like, it's like a review, but it's also like a rewrite, I guess. Just my idea of something that would have been a little bit more interesting. It's a decent film. It's just decent, though. It's not great. Anyway, I've rambled on long enough. Thank you guys so much for watching to the end of this video. Let me know in the comments what your thoughts were about Lisa Frankenstein, or what you think would have been more fun to put in here, or if it's a perfect movie, just let us know in the comments. Leave us a like if you like this video. Otherwise, subscribe, because we do these videos every single week, as well as other movie-related topics on Wednesdays. So, without further ado, we'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.